In December 2022, I started playing God of War Ragnarok and I saw an interesting combat system. It was more fun than I thought, and the two different weapons, which are the Leviathan Axe and the Blades of Chaos, and I just thought, these systems seem suspiciously familiar. I'm not implying, by the way, that God of War Ragnarok stole a combat system from a game that I'm going to talk about. This game is from like 2008. You could say there's a bit of a time gap. But I just love switching weapons to do different things. For example, I use the Blades of Chaos for general mobbing and the grapple feature, and I use the Leviathan Axe for its range capabilities and other nifty tricks. The footage you're watching is most likely not corresponding 100% to what I'm saying, but just take my word for it. The two weapons do different things, so that's why I like switching between them. It's fun. Now, I'm going to show you what game I'm talking about, and it's one you might not expect if you ignore the title and thumbnail. To be honest, it's most likely one you've never heard of. Oh god, this game looks off. Okay, before I talk about this, make sure to keep an open mind because there are spectacular things here. First of all, the game's name is Spider-Man Web of Shadows, and it is one of my favorite games ever. So yeah, I did make jokes about how crappy this game is, and it definitely can be for multiple reasons, but I still like it. To this day, I don't really know why I enjoy it so much, so I'm here to explore it with you. I rediscovered this game around a year and a bit ago in like late 2021, and I was genuinely surprised how good this game played for its age, and it's just good. I say rediscover because I knew about this game when I was like 11. I found it on YouTube specifically, but I didn't have a system to play it on. All I had to play on was like a Samsung Galaxy Tablet 3 and a crappy laptop. It was not fun. I'm telling you this because I'm going to try and bring my little kid me back and try and figure out why I was attached to this game, even through just YouTube videos, and why I'm attached to it now. The glaring thing about the game is its art direction. The characters have this semi-realistic art style, especially when you look at Luke Cage and Spider-Man. Look at how large their torso is and small their waists are. What they wear are colorful too. Their designs feel like they were ripped out straight of a comic book then pasted into the game. They're not the only characters with distinct color, of course. There's Wolverine, Electro, Black Widow, Black Cat, and even Mary Jane and her bright orange top. There's also Venom being covered with strong blue hues and Spider-Man's symbiote suit, which is covered in strong purple hues. The game is just colorful, which helps because the game's art style in other places, specifically the city, can look bland. I'm not a fan of the slightly warm filter that's placed in all parts of the game. Is this place supposed to be apocalyptic at this point? It looks like Fallout New Vegas. I mean, you could argue that the game's drab warm tint can help make the characters stand out more, but I don't prefer it. I actually modified the game a tiny bit by attaching a program called Reshade and shifted how the colors, shadows, and light works. I don't know how they do this because as far as I know they don't change anything in-game like the engine. It's essentially a filter on top of it. I even added a black border around the characters like they were inked or something, and it fits so well. The art direction also applies to enemies. A great example of this is the Kingpin's goons with their bright red and blue armor. I wonder if colors play a significant role in this game. I'm not gonna analyze that, you need a different YouTuber for that. The color designs of the enemies are very distinctive. You can break down the colors of the other enemies too. The gangs in the beginning section have orange and purple colors, and the late game symbiotes have a wild array of colors to them. It depends on the enemy, but they prominently have shades of dark blue and purple combined with white, and various vibrant shades of red, blue, pink, and purple. The infected citizens, on the other hand, don't have much of a distinct color palette to them. They kind of just look like regular citizens with different animations, and it works effectively. The fact that they look discreet like regular citizens is kind of the point. It's even creepier when they cheer for you when you have the symbiote suit on because citizens run away when you have it on, so you know something's up. It's a level of fear that I didn't expect from this game, but it gets creepier later. The game's art direction not only influences the literal colors on the enemies, but also in gameplay and feel. I'll expand on that later. When you're looking at the combat of this game, you most likely notice it's very expressive with bright streaks of yellow or purple effects happening. Spider-Man's moves are exaggerated to cartoonish levels with his flurry of punches or tendril attacks. It feels so good when doing combat, not only because of the gameplay, but how good it looks. It almost feels like you're making a piece of art when doing combat as flashes of yellow, red, white, purple, and black explode on the screen. The best part is that it doesn't even clutter the screen, which is a big A+ for me. Keep in mind, this is just the effects. The same exaggerated nature also applies on web swinging too, specifically the speed. You can web swing so fast in this game, and keep in mind the parts you're seeing are only the beginning levels of the web swing speed. If you didn't know, you can upgrade the swing speed by collecting spider tokens. The swing speed you're watching is me touching them accidentally and gaining levels. I think I'm around level 2 or 3 in this footage. Seriously, I feel like Spider-Man is going Mach 10 with his swing speed, which is unrealistic of course, but it's something I really enjoy. Going back to combat, some of you might have thought blasphemy about me not talking about the combat animations, and I don't even know what to say. It's clear why the animations are awesome. The funny thing is that these animations were also designed to go up against symbiotes like Venom, so it's funny watching someone beat the ever-living crap out of a regular guy by paving their skull until it becomes part of the pavement, whip swinging them to oblivion, or throwing literal cars at them. Like, come on, Spider-Man, these are just regular people, calm down. Not even to mention all the other ways you can beat them up, but yeah, you get it. But I'll go more in depth. Spider-Man has 2 combat animation sets, one for the regular suit, one for the symbiote suit. Even with the basic combos, you see the tension and weight in his actions. Red attacks with a speed that almost stick to enemies' faces with fast combos and hits that make sure they can't have a window of attack. The design of this suit also has attacks like the Eagle Kick, or the first basic wall hit that have large directional ranges to quickly home in on an enemy. These attacks have little spaces or time gaps in between other attacks, and with this on, you make sure that you control a combat situation, switching from one enemy to another like lightning. What I mean by this is that some attacks make it so that you can't move for a bit because you have to wait for the animation to finish, and the original suit has little of that. The symbiote suit, on the other hand, can also be swift but possess hits that look like they have great tension, and they do. They're slower in their execution but marvelous when they hit. If anything, this suit feels explosive since it has attacks that have wide ranges and you can feel the sheer power based on how it moves around the combat scenario while doing great damage to the environment in the process. With this suit, you're not trying to subdue, you're here to give pain. Sounds dramatic, I know, but doesn't it sound cool? You can clearly see this difference in the way Spider-Man stands while wearing a suit. With the regular suit, he looks relaxed, yet ready, determined and willing to get the job done. The symbiote suit, on the other hand, looks crunched, flexed, and domineering. Spider-Man slightly moves his legs to shift his way into a more aggressive stance, widens his arms, flexes his hands to look like he's about to rip someone apart, and tilts his head down like an aggressive animal waiting to attack. The suit is not only ready, but angry. Grrr! Since we're here, let's talk about the design of Spider-Man's suit. His regular suit is standard enough, possessing the classic red and blue with a spider logo design resembling the 1978 Spectacular Spider-Man line of comics. The suit's texture possessing an almost leathery, rough material around it. The symbiote suit, on the other hand, fits tightly around Spider-Man's muscles with an almost liquid rubber feel for the texture, making Spider-Man shiny, further emphasizing the power of the suit. Mostly the muscles part, not really the shiny bit. The biggest differentiator for Spider-Man's suits though are the eyes. He looks pissed off, like he saw the game's Metacritic score or something. This angry look fit the game's narrative well, like the suit is priming us as the audience that what he's going to go through or about to go through is something monumental, which he does. This goes back to what I said earlier about aesthetics influencing gameplay. This aggressive suit design primes the player to want to fight and be expressive with the game's systems, which is fighting. A stealth game, this is not. This applies to the symbiote suit too. The material of the suit emphasizes the muscles around Spider-Man's eyes, so without even changing the shape of the eyes, he looks more aggressive. Apart from design, what do the suits actually do for gameplay? You all know that I said that aesthetics influence gameplay, but it's not all aesthetics. There is a real gameplay change when you switch suits. I played through the game a lot of times now. I have almost 50 hours on it, or at least that's how much I had when I wrote the script. I now have 75 hours. And in some of those playthroughs, I had a one suit only challenge. I did that mainly for fun, but because of that, I got really intimate with how the suits work and their drawbacks, and I have a few things to say that people might disagree with, which will be interesting. If I am going to talk about the core gameplay mechanics, which I will, suit switching is definitely one of them. It's essentially just the act of changing suits. But why though? How does suit switching help? Well, first, we need to establish how combat works in general. If I were to describe the combat in this game, it would be free. It feels like you can do anything from anywhere and it adds to the experience of being Spider-Man. The 3 different movement states you can fight in is of course the ground, the air, and the walls. Even having this as a foundation can have tons of variety in how you can take on enemies depending on the situation. You don't experience them equally though. You'd most likely fight on the ground more, but just having the option to take it to the air or the wall with minimal effort is great. I personally like moving around a lot when fighting, and in my opinion, it is optimal to move around since enemies are coded to spread apart, especially ranged or flying enemies, or it anecdotally seems like that. Even better yet, use the enemies to move around with specific moves. By the way, the real true reason that this game is so good is because you can use enemies as skateboards. But get this, Not only once, but twice. And it also helps move around while doing area of effect damage at the same time. Before delving more into combat, I should say that I played this using an Xbox 360 controller, so I'm gonna be using these buttons. And also look, this is the same Xbox 360 controller that I showed off in the Attack Chan video. Wow. Combat is simple enough. Press X to attack, press A to jump, and press B to either web shoot or tendril grab. You can either hold or combine some of these buttons to do different things, and of course, Y to web strike. Web strike is arguably the most useful ability that Spider-Man has. It allows him to go from enemy to enemy seamlessly, as long as you don't get interrupted. This action keeps the combat moving and to ensure that Spider-Man isn't stuck doing nothing in short periods of time as he tries to move from one enemy to another. It isn't just a connector though, it does other things too, but I'll get into that later. Another connector of some kind, though not explicitly stated or taught, is the tendril grab. It grabs light ground enemies towards you or pulls you towards others. This is like a weaker version of a web strike, as it doesn't offer the same amount of traversal, but it is very useful for connecting combos to another. So sure, the combat might be fun because of how you can easily switch from one enemy to another, but what are you doing when you're not switching enemies? Well, you attack them, of course, but how do you do that exactly? There are multiple ways to attack enemies. As I said, the different suits do different things. This is where aesthetics and gameplay blend together as one affects the other. So some of the stuff that I said about the suit's aesthetic function, like the regular suit looking faster or the symbiote suit looking slower, applies to combat as well. The original suit is faster, easier to control, has more hits, narrower range, and easy to pair combos with. The symbiote suit alternatively hits a lot harder, slower, harder to control, a lot more range, has less hits, hard to pair combos with, though still more damage overall. What I mean by hard to pair combos with is that the symbiote suit has larger delays after attacks, so there's a bigger time window where you can't move after doing some attacks. Just know though that there are exceptions to this, and a way to offset this is that the game provides a healing factor whenever you deal damage to enemies, but only for the symbiote suit though, so if you're low on health, might as well prioritize the symbiote suit's attacks. Keep in mind that I said prioritize, not switch. Keep that in mind, it'll make sense later. To understand what all this means in combat and for future concepts, it's better to get rid of upgrades for now and focus only on the basic attacks. Upgrades add more moves, and I don't want to make this exponentially complicated by talking about upgrades right after talking about combat. Before combat, let's talk about healing. And it's funny that I say that because I'm the only one talking here. What about you? You talk this time. Share your opinions. Oh yeah, that's a very good opinion. Like and subscribe. Spider-Man naturally heals after 7 to 8 seconds of not taking damage, and it resets if you get hit with anything. So when I get put into a corner, I immediately start mashing the special attacks, specifically the multi-flurry for the original suit and the beatdown for the symbiote suit, since they use the same button, so I'm essentially mashing the left bumper and Y when I have no health. You're invulnerable when doing that attack, so it's a good way to run out those 8 seconds. There's also similar attacks that make you invulnerable, like the Spider Twist and Crush. The best way to get health though is through dealing damage with the symbiote suit, since yes, apparently the symbiote suit has lifesteal, which is a really nice touch and can definitely complicate suit prioritization. Yup, suit prioritization. That's the thing I said. Now let's move on to how hits work. It's essentially your basic attacks. With no upgrades, the original suit's ground attacks has 4 hits before starting a combo, and the symbiote suit has 3 hits. The cool thing is that you can switch suits in between to have the benefits of the black suit without sacrificing hits. So for example, you can use the first 3 hits of the symbiote suit and then extend with the finisher combo of the original suit, totaling 4 hits. With no upgrades, it's ideal that you should have the original suit since it's the suit that extends combos. Technically, you're not really extending anything since the game keeps track of how far you are in your combos, so if I attack twice as the original suit and switch, it's always guaranteed that I will get this Stomp AoE attack. Earlier, I said that the symbiote suit is generally more powerful. It doesn't mean that it applies to all attacks evenly. For example, the first 2 hits of the standard symbiote suit attacks deal near identical damage to the first 2 hits of the regular suit attacks. So when doing combos, it's important to know which hits do what. So sure, getting the power of the symbiote plus extending that combo with the original suit deals more damage. That's clear, right? But you must know that it's situational. You don't want to deal more damage than you have to, since the symbiote suit is slower, it can be less efficient. So sometimes tuning down the damage for speed by using the original suit is useful. Again, there are exceptions. There's a combo I found that strays from this rule, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's others like it too. It's when you switch to the original suit after the first 2 hits of the symbiote suit. The reason that this is faster, even though we're using the symbiote suit for most of it, is because it skips the time you need to wait for the stomp hit for the symbiote suit. Usually, a combo for the symbiote suit goes like this: left swing, first hit, right swing, second hit, short delay, and then the stomp, third hit. That delay though is attached to the stomp and not a delay after the second hit, so as far as I know there's no delay for the second hit. I also tested the red suit, but this time the delay is attached to the second hit rather than the third, so if you use the first two hits of the original suit and switch or keep going, there's always going to be a delay. For the original suit, it's built in that the second hit is always going to have a delay to the third hit, except if you interrupt it, which is stopping the combo and doing something else, or switching suits, which we established has a delay anyway because the third hit is the stomp attack. Hopefully editing me is doing his work and actually putting good visuals on this because it sounds convoluted, complicated, and messy. So, the reason that this combo is fast is because it skips a delay between the second and third attacks in both suits. But how? As we established, there are no delays after the first two hits for the symbiote suit, but the original one does. So, if we switch it to the original suit after the two symbiote suit hits, it goes immediately to the third attack of the original suit without any delay. It's a small speed boost, but it does help, or at least enough for me to want to use it. The funny thing is that after experimenting, I found another combo that's just like this, but much faster. Instead of starting with the symbiote suit, start with the original suit, hit once, switch, hit again with the symbiote suit, and then go back to the red suit. The timing window is tight, but I do find it useful in combat, especially in my no upgrade run. The same kind of suit switching combination value also applies to air and wall combat, though admittedly less prominent. Air combat has 3 hits for both suits, again without upgrades, and with proper timing of suit switching, you can extend it to 4. If you really want to know how to do it though, since I know you're just begging me to say, after the first 2 hits, counting the eagle kick, switch to the symbiote suit so you'll get the last 2 hits of the air symbiote suit combo. Suit switching also works for walls, though you need to upgrade it for more control since the initial wall attacks aren't really built to have freedom for suit switching, or at least compared to air or ground attacks. The wall attacks are also 3 hits, but by the way the suit's last 2 hits are set up, it's difficult to switch to another one, or at least not as easy as the air or ground attacks. There are some weird qualities of suit changing and how it skips delays. Generally, I think suit switching does help cancel delay, but it really depends on the type of attack, like the stomp hit. Again, this is with no upgrades, so I don't know how this interacts with other attacks. If this sounds complex, it is, but you're never expected this in-game. This is just for my own playstyle. It also depends, it's not like the fastest attacks or the most damaging attacks are necessarily the best. There's also another variable to combat. When you're fighting a group of enemies, depending on the group, you might want to prioritize one suit over the other. For example, if there's a big group of heavies and you want to kill them fast, you don't want to use the red suit as much since it does less damage. But here's the thing. When you're using the symbiote suit, you have a larger delay when you can move again after doing attacks. So depending on the situation, you might want to use the original suit's attacks to give you a larger window to dodge out the way or to move on to another enemy faster. This is especially clear when you're doing air combat since the symbiote suit has a very large delay after attacking, so it's kind of a risk or reward thing. When you're using the original suit, at least you can dodge out the way very consistently. Upgrades also impact the type of attacks you do, and it can complicate combos, especially when it changes damage value since sometimes I purposely do weaker attacks to kill enemies as efficiently as possible, and it can mess up my flow if enemies die faster than I'm used to. Upgrades also add more hits. For example, the original suit on the ground can have a 5th and 6th attack, and the symbiote suit can have the elbow smash and the tendril whip. I could go into more detail about how these impact combos or how these new attacks interact with each other, but I don't want to focus on these too much than I already did, so let's talk about the other upgrades you get. Each suit has its own set of upgrades, and some attacks are similar, but they impact the game in different ways. Take the Tendril Burst and the Tornado for example. You execute them by holding the attack button. One is a tornado of punches, and one blows up stuff, and they have their own specific uses. The upgrade's main fun factor though is how they evolve your playstyle throughout the game, making the campaign a satisfying experience. Fun fact, if you use the Wall Crush attack, which is holding your attack button in wall combat, and switch to the symbiote suit in the middle of the animation, you can combine both Wall Crush and Wall Slam. Even in this attack where you just hold one button, you can still suit switch in the middle of it. I could go into detail about other useful upgrades like the Spider Twist and Grind and how it's useful for knocking enemies around, or its weaker variants to make it so that you just don't bounce off like a typical web strike. But just know that upgrades in this game, rather than adding more damage, allows you to do more in combat. You'll probably not even notice the concepts I am talking about, or if the game even focuses on these that much. You're never really forced to think about it. A lack of a difficulty slider really does hamper the game, since the difficulty doesn't really require you to use the game's nuances in its gameplay, especially if you do subsequent playthroughs. I use it because it's fun, though I'm a bit shaky whether the game needs a difficulty slider in its current state, because I don't know if it's designed for harder difficulties. I don't know whether the gameplay loop is tight enough for a more difficult experience. An interesting thing about the combat moves is that they are not only exclusive to combat, some of them can also be used outside of it. A basic move you can do while traversing is the air dodge, which is basically holding block and pressing jump. It has iframes too, which is pretty neat. This move is useful if you need a bit of extra distance while falling diagonally towards your destination. But if you don't want extra distance and you want to stop yourself immediately, you can use the eagle kick. As you see in this footage, you can use it to cancel your momentum immediately and go in another direction. You can also use the air dodge to move inversely and get a similar effect, but it's less effective. The only combat traversal move that is locked behind upgrades, as far as I know, is the Tendril Rage attack. During combat, you use this when you're surrounded by a big group of enemies and need an AoE attack, but in Traversal, this thing carries your momentum. So, it's best to use this when your speed hits its fastest point while web swinging. To execute this, after letting go of the web, immediately hold the attack button and there you go. It's literally just holding your attack button to carry your momentum. You can even do it vertically too. In my opinion, the best move is the glitched version of the air dodge, but it flows so well with Traversal it doesn't even feel like a glitch. This thing also carries your momentum while web swinging, but it also boosts your momentum if you do it under the right situations. The way you do this is by web shooting, and while the animation is playing, press your block button and mash jump. If you do it right, it should look like this. Notice the web that follows Spider-Man's hands when I executed it, and the boost in momentum compared to falling normally. There's a couple of variations of this depending on what you're doing. The most common variation is when you air dodge, so it looks something like this, and it can work anywhere, anytime, and you can do it over and over again until you hit the ground. But if you just want to carry your momentum but not air dodge, you can do this instead. While just getting off a web swing, hold block and press your jump button twice instead of mashing it for an air dodge. If you want to slow your descent to the ground, you can also just smash web shoot since it slows you down too. These are minor supplementary moves, but they're still cool either way, and I'm pretty sure there's even more moves to be found or variations if it's tested more. All these ways to engage with Traversal is basically me saying that I find the Traversal fun. I could also say that it's a freeing system, as in you can do a lot of things the way you want them, and list bullet points to moves that you can do, but I'm pretty sure you get the idea. I suggest you go watch White Light's video on Spider-Man Web of Shadows. It's a good video for a more critique angle. I also want to make it clear that this video is not a critique, like I'm literally just explaining why the game is fun and choose to go into detail into its systems when I want to. The Traversal is one of the reasons that I like the game, but it's that and everything else that makes the game click for me. The Traversal mixed with the combat system makes for a very freeing experience. It feels like you can do anything from anywhere and it feels good to move around. I touched on the combat elements briefly, but I didn't look at it as a whole. The fact you can even fight on walls gives the game a level of freedom that I didn't expect. That and sustainable air combat. When you're swinging through the city while looking at the buildings and realize it can be a potential battle scenario makes the city feel like a playground, but not just on top of rooftops or alleyways, but the whole city, including the buildings themselves. As far as I know, this is one of the biggest differentiating factors compared to all the other Spider-Man games. Either that or its bugs. Though I wish the game would lean in more to a specific gameplay loop because there are enough elements to work with. If you all want, I can make an imagined Spider-Man Web of Shadows sequel, or like a reimagined version of it with like concept art and everything, because I like concept art and I make them sometimes. I think it'd be fun. And that's it. That is the video. I am so tired. This took me 2 hours to record and most of it was just me messing up my lines because I cannot remember lines and I do not know how to read apparently. So thank you for watching. Oh, and one more thing before you hit the like button, before you subscribe, before you comment, because I know you're gonna do that. I have this new thing behind me. You probably can't see it. It's up there. It's actually cut off. It's my doodle paper. If you leave a comment, or just any comment, if you type an interesting comment, like I'll pick you if you type an interesting comment, funny comment, whatever. You can tell me what to doodle on this piece of paper. I got like a Sharpie and I'm gonna doodle. So leave a comment and ask me to draw something. and I'll draw something. Don't be too specific though, because I'm not gonna draw like a realistic portrait of your grandmother or something like that. Just a little doodle. But anyways, thank you for chiming in, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.